And there we go. It's another ridiculous night as my round table joins me, Ben, the ridiculous Riddick, in rants concerning the nerd culture of yesterday and today. Joining me at my round table, as always, is Nikki, the powerful Powell.
Hi.
Over in Capelli's corner, James Capelli.
Hello, everyone.
And for his ridiculous rants debut, the pride of Long Island himself, IGN's own Colin Moriarty.
Beyond, and good choice
Beyond.
on the moniker. I know you were discussing which one to use.
You know,
that is actually my favorite one. So.
Yeah, I think you're Long Island homegrown, so I figured that would be the one that you'd appreciate the most. Thank you.
My favorite is the it's your boy Das Colin.
Oh, Das Colin. And when I do that, people get mad at me and they're like, "It's Dare Colin, it's Dare Colin," and I'm like, "It's a joke."
It's a joke, and it sounds funnier, Das Colin.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what, Colin? Was ist joke?
Oh, I didn't take German. I took French, so.
Oh, okay. Well, close enough. I mean,
they are right next to each other.
Oh yeah, they're basically the same language.
Yeah, exactly. They're both very romantic languages.
Absolutely, absolutely. One's very nice and phlegmy, and the other's,
very screamy. Screamy.
Yeah, make me throw up.
So tonight's topic, we're going to be going over the big debate on whether or not video games are art. But before we do that, we're going to start the show the way we always do, with what are you doing with your life? And Colin, you're our guest today. What kind of nerdy things are you doing with your life right now?
I've been playing a lot of games for review. So I've been playing Tales of Exilia 2 on PS3. I've played that about 25 hours in the last few days because I have to get through it. And I'm really enjoying it. I can't tell you much more about it right now, but if you like Tales of Exilia, I think you're going to like Tales of Exilia 2. I've been playing Velocity 2X on Vita. I'm not reviewing that. Vince is reviewing that, but I just am a huge fan of Velocity, a huge fan of Future Lab, the studio. I think they're very underrated. So I've been playing that.
We were talking about that before the show. And, I haven't played it, so I'm gonna have to give it a try.
Yeah, I think Velocity Ultra is the first one, and actually Velocity technically is the first one. That's a mini though, and then Velocity Ultra, and then on and on. So, and then I've been reading a book called Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom. It's about Nick Bostrom's he's a professor of philosophy at Oxford, and the book's about how he thinks that the greatest threat to humanity in the next 20 years is AI. He says that nukes and global warming and all this stuff are irrelevant. That we're on the verge of creating an AI that is going to be smarter than us and self-aware, and that we should be very scared of it. So it's a really, really fascinating book.
That sounds like an amazing book. It's called Super Intelligence.
Yep.
I'm writing that down right now.
It's got a picture of an owl on the cover. It's available only digitally right now, and then it'll be available in hardcover, I think, early September. But if
that's okay. I only consume digital content, so.
Oh well, I read it pretty voraciously. In the last 2 years, I've only downloaded books, and I never thought I'd be comfortable with that. But it's awesome. So,
it's amazing.
Is it ebook only?
It's ebook only for now through I guess Kindle and Nook and all that kind of stuff.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So get it on your favorite ebook retailer. James.
Yo.
What are you doing with your life?
I've been playing some games, watching some shows. I've been I played a lot of Shovel Knight. Finally got into that, and I'm really enjoying it. I got
DS or Wii U?
PC.
PC. Oh, I guess there's that too. I forgot about that. That is a console-ish.
So I've been enjoying that. I got the 50% achievement. So I know I'm getting close, but I'm really enjoying it. I like the little bit of humor they throw into the artwork. It reminds me of Rogue Legacy a lot, which is why I picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a little bit similar, but it's good. It's fun. I've been watching Knights of Sidonia, which is the Netflix-produced anime.
Oh, I saw that on Netflix the other day while I was browsing through.
It's basically Attack on Titan in space.
That makes it 10 times more exciting to me.
Yes,
it's in space.
Except the dialogue, the characters, and I guess those are two big things. They're terrible. The dialogue and the characters suck. But like I was watching with a couple of friends, and we got like 3 or 4 episodes into it, and we're like, this is really bad. Until someone says something, and we just died laughing because it's like, okay, there's no way that this isn't a spoof on anime at the same time. how I think it is, which makes it all the better. And then I started enjoying it. The mythos of the show is great, and then finally got to an episode where I'm like, okay, no, finally a character I really like. So it's back and forth, but I'm gonna finish it, and the animation's really weird, but I'm liking that too. Those are the big things I've been doing. Still playing.
So as far as the dialogue with that goes, James, is it on par with the ridiculousness of Final Fantasy X?
No, because Final Fantasy X really seems like it was trying, whereas this is just being very simplistic and a little corny.
Gotcha. All right.
So, yeah, and so then I'm playing the Wii U a bit. There's this one board game I got called Legendary Showdown, and it is a card game based on the webcomic Dr. McNinja. If you've never read this webcomic, it's probably the best thing in the world. It's...
Dr. McNinja?
Yeah, he's a
Brought
doctor.
to you by McDonald's?
So what?
Brought to you by McDonald's?
No. But the guy who writes it, he loves Deadpool, so the main character is kind of based on him with not necessarily his fourth wall breaking, but just like his crazy references, and he's just funny. It's an awesome comic. So that's what I've been doing lately. I've been rereading that because of playing the card game.
Gotcha. And Nikki, what have you been doing with your life?
I've been doing quite a few things. So I was not on last week, and so the last 2 weeks I've had a lot of stuff to do. I platinumed Resogun in 2 days.
Ooh.
Which was awesome.
It's a good game.
It was pretty good. G and I have been playing co-op because he's been broken, so all he wants to do is play Resogun, and that's all he's been doing. And I'm like, well, let me get in on this. I'm tired of not being able to play. So the trophies just kept coming. So I was like, okay, awesome. I'll just platinum it. There's only like 2 or 3 left, and so that worked out really well.
It's a fun game to platinum, too.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. Which is just another check off on my New Year's resolution list that I'm so close to finishing that Ben just won't finish.
You're an asshole.
Yep. So we started and finished Sherlock, which was really good.
I do love that show.
Good show. Really funny. It's like House, but British and with crime instead of... Yeah.
Just like House. British and with crime.
He's so full of it. He thinks he's like the badass. He knows everything, which, I mean, he is badass and he does know everything. But, I mean, it reminds me of House, just with crime. And let's see, we've been playing Black Ops multiplayer. We played some Extinction last night. That's been pretty fun. It's a lot more fun playing together with him than it is just by myself. Because I play by myself and I'm like, well, this is dumb. After 2 or 3 games, I turn it off. But then together, it's been a lot more fun. And we went and saw Guardians of the Galaxy, which I really enjoyed.
The movie was awesome.
Yeah, it was. And I bought the soundtrack the next day because it was fantastic, and I've been listening to it at work every night. So, yeah. Good week.
That is a fantastic movie. I kept
we did
on
a whole episode on that one movie by itself. I'm pretty sure.
No, I mean I was arguing with people about how I thought that movie was better than the Avengers, and
I can understand that argument.
Yeah. My week was actually pretty chill. I downloaded The Last of Us Remastered, started playing some of that. Since I didn't actually finish the campaign on the PS3 before I migrated over, I'm going to actually dedicate time to finishing that game. And
I know it's such a trudge to get through that game.
Oh yeah.
How do you do it, Ben?
I don't know.
I'm actually appalled that I didn't know this piece of information already.
You did know this piece of information.
I did, and I think I blocked it out because it's such a horrific statement that you didn't finish it.
So you know the thing that game is hard for me to play because my wife is terrified of zombies, so I can't play the game when my wife is home. So that means that I have very limited windows of time to play the game.
All I'm hearing right now is tons of excuses as to why you didn't finish like the best game of last year.
I'm not arguing that is a terrible thing. It is a terrible thing, but I'm going to make sure that I remedy that this year. That game looks amazing. I have to say I would say it does look significantly better on the PS4 than it did on the PS3, and I was kind of skeptical on a remastered version of the game. And the multiplayer in that game is just so much fun too. I can spend hours in that multiplayer. Yeah, so that's what I was doing. That's pretty much the only nerdy thing that I've been doing this week. So let's jump straight into our topic, shall we? Are video games art? For us to really get into the nitty-gritty of this, I thought the first thing that we should do is kind of give our own definition of art, because everyone sees art differently. For example, my definition of art would be anything that can bring forth a strong emotion from the person that is consuming the art, which means to me that video games are definitely art, because there are plenty of games that I have played, The Last of Us included, where the emotions are definitely high. Nikki, how would you define art?
I've got more of I don't know, two definitions really. I mean, art to the person who's creating it's something that they've put all of their time and effort and energy and a creative process into it, and it makes them feel something. So I think it has its own definition for people who are creating it, but then I think it also has, for people who are consuming the art, it's something that makes you feel something. I mean, if you look at a painting, regardless if you like it or not, it's still going to make you feel something, and so it's art. That's what that's been considered. If you play a game, as long as it's making you feel something, happy, mad, sad, angry, whatever, that's art. If it's pretty, if it's ugly, it's been created by someone, and they've put all this time and effort into it, and it's making you feel something.
So you see art more as like a two-way window kind of thing. The artist looking out through the artwork, and then the person consuming the artwork looking back.
Yeah, I mean, it takes two to create art, the person to create it and the person to consume it.
All right.
Per se.
Colin, what is your definition of art?
My definition of art is pretty loose in the sense that I think it's about something that evokes emotion or feeling for sure, but it could be basically anything you want, because I think you have to kind of loosen the definition even when you're looking at movies or TV for those to be considered art, or even a book or poetry. I don't think that the Renaissance artists would have considered Sherlock a work of art, but a lot of people do, and I think that's acceptable. But I think a work of art could be an elegant mathematical proof. I think a work of art could be a beautiful tape-on-tape pass in hockey. I think a work of art could be all these things that are beautiful to witness, or beautiful to take part in, or beautiful, when I'm on the ice playing hockey back in the day, I felt like that was an orchestra. It made a lot of sense to me, and I loved watching it. To other people, it's just a sport. I think that watching a front seven in football work on an offensive line is a work of art. So my definition's pretty loose on that, which is why I think games are unequivocally art, but we'll get to that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's a good point that you make. I mean, all of those things took a lot of time and energy for the people to actually create it. Even when you're talking about that perfect pass in hockey or that perfect play in football, it's something that they put all their time and energy into to create. And yeah, no, I like that definition. James.
Me. For me, I mean, yeah, of course, I'm going to say that, art is something that makes you feel something, makes you feel emotion. But, I mean, a lot of things do that, and not everything that makes you feel emotion necessarily I would call art. I mean, I would definitely give it some sort of good definition, but beyond emotion, I would say that art is something that makes you dig into yourself to find humanity. Not necessarily your own emotions all the time, but I mean, you think about literature and what do we do with things in our lives that aren't human? We try to put human aspects onto it, like, oh, that light's stupid, or my dog my dog thinks he's really funny. We try to find some way to relate and connect with things that we don't necessarily commonly do, have a connection with. So for me, that's what I say. I say art is a window frame into that. Either another person's life, whether we know them or not, whether it's an inanimate object that we can then put some sort of humanistic aspect into it. That's what art is to me.
Okay. So here's my question. Obviously, we all think video games are art. And this is going to be my silly question of the night. if video games are art, do you think you should ever see them in a museum? And this goes to anyone who wants to answer.
Yeah, and I think they already are in a museum, but
Yeah,
in
they are.
some pretty well-respected ones. But yeah, I absolutely think they should. It's just that we have to look at them from different points of view. Like, what makes a video game so powerful and so special and such a poignant work of art is that it's not. Like, paintings are beautiful, and literature or poetry can be really beautiful to read and evoke emotion, or we can really get into a great movie, and that's a work of art. But you play a game. And so I actually think that the fundamental line through all games and in which they should be examined as a work of art is not necessarily the emotion they evoke, but how they play. Because it's the gameplay that's the artistic point of Super Mario Brothers on NES, for instance. That gameplay is perfect, and that was a heavily influential game, and people really enjoyed playing it. And the way it makes you feel when you play it is so much better than a stagnant platformer that, if we look at it very broadly, then I think that a game like that belongs in a museum, not because it's pretty, but because it look how it plays, and nothing else, no other piece of art can do that. You can't play and interact with a piece of art usually, unless you're a musician or something like that, or you're writing a work of art.
Well, and you know, that's one of the arguments that Roger Ebert brings forth in his, you know, infamous article about how video games are not art. The fact that you are interacting with it makes it less of an art because of the interaction, whereas, you know, other regular or more mainstream pieces of art, if you will, the artist forces you into their kind of perspective, and you don't have a whole lot of wiggle room. How do you feel that brings into gaming, though? Do you feel like that is a valid argument?
I don't. I think it's an argument to make it a supreme form of art, a really new and unique form of art. Think about like working through a stage in a game, like, I don't know, like Castlevania 3 or something, some old, like, perfectly pixel perfect game, and a designer drew that probably on graph paper, and then they gave it to some programmers and some artists who did a lot of hex art and created this beautiful stage that then has these amazing jumps and perfect enemy placement, some great music and ambience and beautiful 8-bit pixel graphics, really nice animations. There's like all of these different pieces of things, the things you wouldn't dispute are art, like the music and the backgrounds and all that kind of stuff, put together in this beautiful cacophony, and then you throw in that special element of video games in which you're playing, you're working your way through it, you're experiencing it the way they wanted you to experience it. Maybe you're breaking it, which makes it even more unique, and you're playing it the way they didn't anticipate you would play it. That's super artistic to me, because that is emotional. Even if it's just a base emotion, even if it's just an emotion of happiness, that is art. You know?
I mean, happiness is probably one of the best emotions too, I would say.
Sure.
James,
it's up there. It's at least in my top 3.
Oh, okay, that's it's up there with disdain, right, for you? James, what do you think? Video games in museums? I mean, do you see a video game like Flower turning up in a Museum of Modern Art?
Modern art, nowadays, no, I don't really see that happening. In the same way that we have, you know, paintings and all that stuff. But my viewpoint on it is that art, I guess I'd say the societal definition of art is always changing. You know, back in the day where art was literally drawings on cave walls, you know, it's constantly changing. And then in the past century we got film, and then that changed everything. And for a while it was basically just kind of copying plays, because that's all we knew, and then it started becoming its own medium. Same thing is happening with video games. It started off, I guess they didn't really have any base of reference the way movies did, but then everything, you know, there was that one key success game, and they would all copy it until we got more things going along. And because of our age of technology, it's been able to evolve faster. But so through that, the definition of art itself is going to change. So a modern museum, no. Because it's tough to, you know, put a video game on display the same way you can put a painting on display.
How would you put a video game on display?
Oh, jeez. Probably has to do with a lot of lines or a lot of consoles to get the chance to like go and experience it. And at that point, really, how can you condense a game that you would consider an art piece into a few-minute gameplay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something
And
you can do.
It's all about that experience.
You could break it down into multiple art forms, though. Like, you can have the drawing that the artist did, and then you can have the music spot where all of, you know, the tracks from the game are, and then you can push it all together into the final game, and you can test that game out. That would be the coolest museum I've ever seen in my life.
I would love to try something out like that. But it's the same thing with films and movies. You can't go to a museum, usually, and watch a full movie.
Yeah, but isn't that called a movie theater?
You can watch clips, and you can go and see the...
I'm just saying, if you want to go to a museum of movies, it's called a movie theater. Like, it's right there.
I know, but you understand my point. You're not going to necessarily go to a museum, like a classic museum, to see a work of art that was just made.
This is true.
No.
So...
But you could have cool moments from each movie you put in different areas.
Exactly, and again, that's fine. I like when they do that with movies. I like if they would do that more with video games, and I like it with music too. But you can't encapsulate an entire film in a few minutes. You can't encapsulate an entire game in a few minutes. That's just the definition of art in this sense is changing. I'm not going to buy a video game and put a TV screen on my wall and just have clips from that video game playing 24/7 like I would a piece of
what.
But I think that's a trailer.
But you know what I mean? Like, I can showcase a painting in my house. I can't with a video game, besides putting the box somewhere.
Yeah, and
I was just gonna jump in real quick to say I agree with James in the sense that like it would be difficult to display what matters in a game if most people judge art based on its emotion, right? Like everyone's like, Journey is a work of art. Of course it is. It was a devastating game to play. And it was emotional in ways that were I'd never expected, and I had no idea why I was even upset when I was done with it. But I was like totally devastated after I played that game. Like I just couldn't. I didn't want to talk to anyone, and stuff like that. But like if that's in a museum, how do you convey that without that person sitting there for 90 minutes to 2 hours and figuring that out? It doesn't make it any less a work of art. It just means that we have to figure out ways to convey that, and you can't do it. You can't. It's the same thing if I say Super Mario Brothers is a work of art for its gameplay. Well, we can't show anyone that. Yeah.
They have to. This is art that you do literally have to experience.
Right.
Not in the same way that you experience a painting or even a play. You have to be a part of it to understand the art itself.
For sure.
Nikki, video games in a museum. Do you have
art in a museum? Yes or no?
Art in a museum. Should it happen?
Yes.
That's a theory I've never heard before. No, I think it could be done. It could be done in a really creative, artistic manner. I mean, you take all these parts of it and you can show people all these parts and then put it all together and, maybe it wouldn't just be video games in a museum. It could be like part E3 like testing areas and then part graphics that people have created in their own time that represent these games, and you could do a lot with it.
Absolutely. I do like the idea of breaking the game apart into its finite pieces. Like, have someone go through an area where they show the concept art, have someone go through an area where just the music is playing in a really dark room, and then sit them down in front of the game and have them experience the game. That just sounds like the most immersive kind of gaming experience that I would just love to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And another big thing, and this is maybe a place where I would stray from video games being an art, and that is, at the end of the day, what is the video game industry? It's there to make money. You invest in a company because you want to make money. Very rarely will you get that with, classic paintings. People who could sit down their whole lives and make art and be ridiculed and say it's crap, and then post-mortem be considered an artistic genius. It's going to be extremely rare where you're going to see it with a video game where somebody was making games their whole lives, nobody heard of them, and then if they died, then, oh my gosh, look at all these games this person made, they're amazing. And it's different because no artwork has been used in quite the same way to make money, except for maybe film. But so at that point, it's like, well, when do you balance the artistic world with the business side of things? There's that flip-flop back and forth. I don't have really an opinion on that, but so it's a different light to look through.
I don't know. I think in a way, I dispute that in the sense just that there are people that paint to paint, and there are people that write to write and write poetry to write poetry, and there are people that have made films just to because they love cinema and stuff like that. But I think that going back a long period of time, so at least the Renaissance, people were making art specifically for money, and making lots of money on it and having, patrons that would, rich families that would pay them just to make the art that probably wouldn't have been otherwise made. So while I don't disagree with you in the main, I think that art generally, I don't necessarily think you have to separate art from commerce for it to
Well,
be
no,
art.
not to separate it, but I mean, I know what you're saying, but I guess I haven't researched and I didn't live back then, so I don't know if it was ever really like broadcast that, oh, if you want a portrait of your family, you go to this city and the other side, this other country, and you get this guy. Like, if you have the money to do it, that's what you do. That's not something I've heard of. Possible, I'm sure. And again, I think that's more a statement on just how technology has changed society, and that we can just say, you want a video game made, you go to this developer. So,
Well, I
you
mean,
don't have to separate them, but there is that defining line.
yeah, absolutely, and I do have to kind of go to Colin's point. I mean, there are a lot of the AAA titles that come out where, yeah, their main goal is to make money off of it, and the main goal of most games is going to be, to at least get something back. But we're starting to see a huge upswelling of independent developers that are creating these games just for the sake of creating a game. I mean, without some of these indie developers, we wouldn't see games like Gone Home. We wouldn't see games like Thomas Was Alone. I mean, that Thomas Was Alone right there is like one of my favorite games, just for the emotions that I felt while playing that game, and the narration going through it, and the fact that they could tell a story with shapes on a screen, and that was it, was very moving to me. So I think because of indie developers that we're going to start seeing games being made just for just to have artistic games. Not all of these games are coming out to be, shoot the other team or something so simplistic. Not that those aren't art, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So my next question: with all these games out there are a bunch of different kinds of games. There are, you're really the games that you definitely think are art, and I think most people that listen to the show are going to think they're art. Games like The Last of Us, definitely an artistic piece, definitely an emotional piece. But do you think every game out there is art? Because there are some really simple games out there, such as your Call of Duties, your Maddens, your FIFAs, your NHL. Those are all games as well. Do you find those to be just as much art as something like The Last of Us?
Just as much art? No. And this is kind of where it would start to divide for me, is I would still call it an art, mostly because of the game-making process, is where I'd go with that. But, I mean, even in the world of film and literature and paintings, there's such a thing as bad art. There's such a thing as art that other people like that I don't.
I don't think there's such a thing as bad art.
I don't agree with that. Art is art to the person who says it's art.
Yeah.
Somebody out there likes it regardless, and that's art to them, and I think that's what matters.
I could debate that, but it would go into a whole side of a topic that I don't really want to get into. A weird area.
What do you think, Colin? Is NHL 2K14 an artistic piece of work?
Sure. Yeah, I think it is. I think that you definitely have to judge all games as art and then kind of go from there. It's the same thing with music. Like, there's pop that I wouldn't like. Britney Spears would release records, and
you don't think Britney Spears?
No, believe it or not.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Wait a minute. This coming from the guy that listens to Backstreet Boys while he cooks chicken cutlets.
Yeah, I like Backstreet Boys.
Yeah. Okay.
Clear
that up.
I mean, it could be like there are people that really love that those records, and you can't dispute the level of production value on those records. You can't dispute the leveling of mastering. The audio masters on those records are awesome. A lot of the beats are from guys like Scott Storch and really well-known musicians that make millions of dollars just making beats. So like when you reduce it to the sum of its parts, like all of these different things are art. So when you put them together, how isn't it art? And that's kind of the same way I approach games. If elegant programming combines with beautiful graphics, or just graphics with audio, with gameplay, and all that kind of stuff, and you would separate them and you would consider them all pieces of art by themselves, then certainly they're pieces of art when you put them all together. I think even the worst music, even the garbage that I would not listen to that other people might like, is still art with its own merit. So, I mean, that's kind of where I fall on that.
Someone's time and energy went into it to make it, so
someone else out there obviously likes it.
Yeah. So to move on, movies are definitely considered art, and Roger Ebert, he's going to be my main source of reference here. He reviews movies. He calls movies art, and we live in an era where there are some really cinematic games. So what makes a cinematic game different from a movie that people think it's not art? In your opinion, why are they different? What separates them?
I don't really. I mean, I just don't. Like, I know when Ebert would write a lot about this, and he was talking about this quite a bit, a few years ago, and I didn't agree with his stance, just in the sense that I don't really think anything separates it. Think about a film and the 90, 100, 200 people that might make a film, right? And you have the director and the producer. You have art directors and people that worry about costumes and the way the characters look. You have people that write it and you write the dialogue. You have people that...
If you've ever sat through the credits of a Marvel movie, you know there are a lot of freaking people that are a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, you have people that are experts in continuity that just watch films just to see if things between scenes are off so that they can fix them. I mean, there's like all of these weird things, and that would be maybe QA or something like that in games. So, there's not really anything different. It's just that films are older and they're more well-respected, and old people that don't understand games are the ones that are saying this about games, and so it's not really going to be a question in 20, 30, 40 years if games are art. So I don't see them any different than movies and television. I don't think that, when we legitimize movies and then we talk about the great Renaissance artists or something like that, that they would look at movies and video games as being any different.
Mm-hmm.
They're both, one's interactive, one's not. They're both moving. They're both not to be looked at in a frame. I was at a winery with my dad a few weeks ago, and there was this. He and I were walking by this painting, and it was just a white canvas with white paint on it, going for $10,000. And I started laughing at it. And I was like, "This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. This is not art." But someone made that and thought it was art, saw something powerful in it, and if that is art, then I think Journey's art. I think Journey qualifies. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like movies and games, they're the same, except for you're more immersive in the game. You can experience that art and you can feel it, and you can make your own art. You don't have to go in a straight path. You can go left or right, and you can make it your own thing. You don't have to just sit and watch what the person wants you to watch. Like, yeah, you're experiencing what they want you to experience, but in your own way. So, in a way, you're kind of
You can go
helping
your
the
own way.
artists. Can you?
Yeah.
Good job, man. Yeah, I think Nikki hits a really good point there. Oh, she's not done. Go on.
No, what? No, go ahead. I'm done.
Oh, I thought you were done. Or I thought you weren't done. Anyway, it's... damn, I forgot what I was going to say.
It's okay.
Apparently James is done.
So for video games, there's a huge movement in games right now where you're actually running into not only the fact that the developers have created this piece of art, but there are games like Little Big Planet, Minecraft, there's Project Spark coming to the Xbox. These are all games where they are really pushing for the gamer to create something. And I think these are what's going to be the biggest pieces of art, because I've seen the things that people have made in Minecraft, and I just look at that and I'm like, there is no way in hell that I could have ever created something that awesome and be able to pull it off in such a way that that other people would appreciate it. And they're putting a lot of time into it. Do you think that that this is going to be kind of where we start to see a lot more views that games might become more of an art medium?
Well, it gives
more.
people the chance and the ability to express their art when they might not have that opportunity to begin with. I mean, like younger kids, you can draw and do everything like that, but say you want to get into the game industry, you can start by doing small things there, and then you have examples of your work. I mean...
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Colin?
Again, I just think that goes back to looking at art in a very literal way, because, we need to embrace that games are art for reasons that other things, for reasons that other things can't share, other mediums can't share what makes games art necessarily, because I don't think that anyone would dispute that The Last of Us's graphics are beautiful, made by some of the most talented animators and graphics artists in the entire industry. And they're artists. They went to art school, but we have to delve deeper and figure out, like, what is that special something that makes the game art? And it's not necessarily it doesn't necessarily have to be the literal emotion, which is why I hate when people only talk about Team Ico's games, or only talk about that game company's games, or only talk about games with lots of story, or et cetera and so on, because those games are great and they're beautiful, but we have something special in our industry that other mediums don't have, which combines the motion of a movie with the artistic integrity of a painting, with the work, the use of words and the use of powerful characters of a piece of literature, and the icing is that you can play it.
You are a part of it.
Yeah, exactly, and so while Journey, like I said, was very powerful to me, Mega Man 2 is also really powerful. Because it's fun and it plays really well, and that is its own form of art. Gameplay and that mechanics and the honing of that kind of stuff is its own art, created by really talented people that knew how the game should feel. And the operative word is feel. It's just that you're not feeling it in your heart and your brain. You're feeling it through your hands. You're immersed in it. It's like to borrow kind of a trite gaming term, it's kind of like next-gen art. It's what VR could have been for movies 20 years ago when everyone started talking about it back then. And it could have, and what VR can still be in games for people today. Completely immersive.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we started the show, you mentioned you have a list of games.
Yeah.
That you said may not be considered in the more classical way art, but are still art. I'm very interested to hear a couple of these, and what makes you feel that some of these games are the art that they are? Like, what direction do you think people should be looking at games to see them as art?
One game I wrote down was ActRaiser, and I don't know if you guys know this game. It's a Super Nintendo game created by Quintet, which is an old developer that used to make games for Enix before they merged with Square. And ActRaiser is like half God Sim, half side-scrolling action game. And the way that they meld the two components together, basically you play as God, and you go down to the earth to clear areas out of enemies, and then you go back to the heavens to create society below you. So it's kind of like a SimCity kind of game. And
I played this game.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game, and there's artistic merit to the way that it marries those two fundamental things together in the way no one's ever done before, to evoke emotion in kind of your benevolence as God, if you want to be benevolent, while at the same time having really fluid action gameplay that makes you want to keep going. It's the same thing that a movie might have, where something really interesting happens in the beginning and it's unsolved, and you want to wait till the end to see how it concludes. Well, games have that too, and I think ActRaiser did a really nice job of separating two games and putting them together in really clever ways as well. So ActRaiser is a supreme work of art to me, not only on an emotional level, but again on a gameplay level. And the music's awesome too.
It didn't really need, I'm glad it still did, it didn't really need the story as much as it was the gameplay that was the driving force of that.
Indeed. So that's just one example.
Very little kind of mimic that nowadays too.
Do you think there are any games out there where the gameplay might not be the best, most exciting, most thrilling, most captivating, but the game itself still brought forward artistic feeling to you, or evoked what you feel when you see art?
Yeah, I think Flower is a great example of that. I mean, we were talking about that game company. Flower, I think.
Yeah.
Flower doesn't play well, in my opinion. But I don't think it really matters because it's it's not going to get a 10 or anything like that. But because
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful and it's emotional. It's different. It's literally art, which I think is like why a lot of people kind of went for it. Is that it's not as abstract as people think it is. I think it's trying very hard to be art. I think all of that game company's games try very hard to be art.
And it's a really it is a big the point that they're driving in that game is the urban environments taking over nature, marrying the two together. I mean that in and of itself that is art. We've seen it hundreds of times in other pieces of art, and Flower just does it in an even more emotional way.
Exactly, but at least on PS3 it made you use 6-axis and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it was not.
That was annoying as hell.
It was not. It was like mechanically it was just frustrating in a lot of ways to me. And another interesting example. I was talking about this game with my girlfriend before, even though she doesn't play games, she thought this game was really funny. Was Octodad is like a terrible game. Just the way it's fun for 10 minutes and then it's all about it's all frustration. In my opinion, it was. I got all the trophies in it. I don't know why I did that. But that game is a commentary in a lot of ways in my mind, in my heart, even though I don't think they meant it this way. It's a commentary on mechanics, and it's a commentary on the sharpness of playing games and all these kinds of things. And even though it's just supposed to be a silly kind of game, I walked away from that being like, wow, we take good gameplay for granted. That just being able to control something on the screen in a way that makes sense is something we might take for granted as a contributor to making a game art, as opposed to something frustrating, which I thought Octodad was.
James, can you think of any games that you have played where gameplay mechanics were no good, no bueno, but the artistic vision of the game kind of drove you to still play it?
Yeah, probably one of my favorite games of all time is called To the Moon. Made by a very small indie company. It's getting more and more popular as time goes on because it's becoming known for its storytelling. I mean, there's really nothing to the gameplay. You walk around, you hit the space button or A, whatever you're using, to proceed dialogue, and then you walk around some more and you pick some stuff up to go to the next level. And in that sense, the gameplay is kind of boring. But the characters and then the storyline is really what's going to pull you through. And it is to me kind of like what it sounds like Journey was to Colin. That was like afterwards, you're just like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I just need to process this. Like the end of that game just like hit me like a truck. And I went out that evening and I was just like, I was just sitting there just thinking about the 4 hours I put into this game. Just like, what's even the point of life right now, man? This sucks. Just like it hit me real deep. So for me, yeah, while the gameplay can be absolutely a driving force, it doesn't have to be when you're looking at it from an artistic perspective.
How about you, Nikki?
I feel the same about Walking Dead. I mean, the controls were nothing. You hit a button every now and then, but it's the choices that you make and the end of the story. It's just the whole story that you basically create in your own. Like, yeah, you're following a template, but you create your own dialogue almost. And I don't know, like that's the story itself was art to me. And the gameplay, it was
really
horrible,
unique in the fact that it puts you in that scenario, and it's like, how would you actually respond in this?
Yeah.
At least that's how I tried to play it, is how I would actually respond to the situation.
That's how I did, and I said I was going to go through a second time and play it, as I completely wouldn't, and I haven't gotten back to it. But, I mean, that's how I feel about it, is that the gameplay was not that great. It was kind of boring, actually, but the story itself is what kept me going, and to see what was coming next, and, Yeah.
Colin kind of took mine. I mean, Flower for me was that game where it's like I was playing and I was trying to use the 6-axis controls, and I was like, this is dumb, but I just couldn't stop playing the game. The game itself was enticing, and it made me feel feels, for sure. Another game, I didn't necessarily think the gameplay was bad throughout the whole thing. I was just really frustrated in the beginning of it, and that was Unfinished Swan. Which, if you've never played Unfinished Swan, that game is so good. And I mean, you're playing through the game and you're stuck in this white area, and you use ink kind of to find your way through it, and that the first part, everything is white, so it's almost impossible to see anything until you actually use your ink to get through it. But the story of that game was just so powerful, and for Colin and Journey and James and To the Moon, that was a game I finished and I was like, okay, that did not have a happy ending like I was really hoping it would, and I'm kind of sad that this journey is over, so to speak. But it was a game that I had a blast playing, and just the music in it, the soundtrack, even though it was there throughout the whole game, it portrayed the emotion of the game itself, and I felt like that was a game that had emotion, not just was trying to evoke emotion, but the entire game I could feel like it was a living, breathing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Creation, so to speak. Going further into this, Colin, you said you had a pretty big list. I mean, what else you got there?
I think Catherine's a really good example of art. Catherine's one of my favorite games of the last generation, and was on my top 25 games list of all time. Actually, I think that's an extraordinary game. The reason that's art is because it's daring. It's different. It's provocative. It's about a guy cheating on his fiancée with another girl. And even though if you guys have played the game, it ends up not being about that really. The way the game's set up and the way you play 90% of that game is extraordinary. The way that they tie in his dream state where he's haunted by the decisions he's making with his real life, in which he can't escape these two girls, and what he's going to do and the decisions he's going to make. It was a really evocative game. Catherine's a really extraordinary game, and a very underplayed game, and a good puzzle game in the main. I mean, the gameplay is great too, but
it's a hard game.
It's a very hard game. It's very, very hard. I remember playing it before it came out when I got it for review, and I was like, I just couldn't believe it. I thought I was gonna like it, but I couldn't believe how different it is. Now, is it a huge surprise that it's good? The guys who do Persona did this game, and this was their break between 4 and 5. So it's not like a huge surprise that it's good, but that game's special just because of its subject matter and the way it tackles it. And obviously, this comes back, I guess, to the storytelling aspect of games, which I don't think a lot of people look at, because they're always looking at literal emotion, especially sadness. Mm-hmm. I think it's like what we literally judge games based on. The Last of Us is sad because of what happens to Joel, and Journey's sad because of what happens to the little man, the Wanderer, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And Eco's sad because it's a lonely game, and Flower's sad because it's about nature dying and stuff. Well, Catherine's fucking not sad at all. Catherine's scary, actually. And that's why it's cool, I think. So that's another game I don't think people look at as art that I think is very much art.
I mean, and it does what art does. It tackles an issue in society. I mean, infidelity is very present in today's world, so it's tackling that issue and kind of giving you insight as to what can happen when it happens. Huge evil succubus, daughter of evil, and all.
Yeah. I don't want to get too spoilery with it. It gets a little silly actually, but yeah, it's
but it is a good game, and it's on PlayStation now. So even if you didn't get a chance to play it on PS3, you can get it on your new gen consoles.
Yeah, and that's the closest you're gonna get for any Persona 5 news for a while. So
yeah,
it's been awfully quiet. So. Yeah, I mean, that's just a really special game. There's nothing like that game, and I think that's a really special thing about it too.
I haven't played anything like that game other than that game. So kind of the last question, excuse me, the last question that I want to bring to you guys is this: why is it important that games be seen as art? I mean, we love games. We're going to continue playing games whether or not society sees them as art, but what makes it important that people do see it as art? Let's go to Colin. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm not so sure it is important.
Yeah.
I like to think that games are art, and I think that people can enjoy them as art, and I think it's great if people look at them as art, and I think that we will find that more and more people do look at them as art. But I think a lot of it has to do with gamers trying to legitimize their craft and their hobby, the way film buffs have legitimized film, and the way TV buffs have have legitimized television and dramas and serials and all these kinds of things. I don't think for the act of playing a game or the industry itself necessarily benefits from it being looked at as art. I think it's something that's really important to gamers, because I think it makes them feel like it's a more legitimate thing. And I don't think we have to feel that way. I don't think we have to feel like we have to legitimize games.
You can like what you like and not be judged for it.
Yeah, so while I think games are unequivocally art, I think, when they were making Tennis for Two at Brookhaven National Labs on Long Island in 1959 on an oscilloscope, and it was basically Pong, like that's art, sure, and I think that's actually really unique art, because they were taking a military implement, a radar screen basically, and making a game on it. So that's certainly art in its own right, whether it was the welding, whether it was the rudimentary programming, all that kind of stuff, all the way up to Uncharted 4 Thief's End, which looks beautiful obviously, and will a game we're all anticipating. I think they're equivalent works of art. It's just a matter of is it really important to look at it like that? And I'm not really so sure it is. I don't lose sleep on the question. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you don't lose sleep over it. James, is it important?
No, I'd agree with Colin. It's not necessary for games to grow as a medium to be viewed as art.
But James, I don't want to say to my friends, oh, I really like gaming, and they're like, what? You're a gamer? I don't want that to happen anymore, James.
You have friends like that?
I feel oppressed.
You feel oppressed?
I feel oppressed.
Well, there's a group of people you can go chat with about it, and you're in the right place for it.
Oh.
We can console you. But I mean, I would compare it to, I think the closest comparison you can get is to board games. I don't view board games as an art. Some of them are great, and again, I'll go back to the game making aspect of it being different than the game playing. But I mean, that's an industry that's continuing just to grow by the day, and I don't really know many people who are huge board game buffs who demand that you take their craft as an artistic view. So, no, I don't think we need to do it, and I'm okay if we don't. I would love it to be for more people to accept it to be an artwork, because that's what a lot of people put their time into, trying to make it art or putting art into games. So, yeah, that's my stance.
You know what I love is there are the people that say video games aren't art, but then you have the groups like Video Games Live who do their big-ass shows with a giant orchestra, and they play a game while they play the music.
Yeah.
It's like, how is that not art?
I think even speedrunning a game is its own form of art.
Oh.
Like that just reminded me of the guys, the metal band that played Mega Man 2's soundtrack while a guy sat on stage in front of hundreds of people at this club or whatever and played the game from front to back, and they would play along.
Yeah.
So as he finished the stage, they would stop and then play the next stage or whatever. That was a dynamic arrangement, of two works of art: the soundtrack being played and then the game itself.
It's amazing when you see that done. It's like, oh wow, I never thought about splitting this apart like that.
If we're going speedrunning as art, then I think whoever can memorize those codes for Mortal Kombat or whatever they were back in the day, that you had to have all those crazy codes to get combos and get shit done, that's art, because I can't do that. It's amazing that people can remember all of that stuff and actually get it done.
It's
finger ballet. Yeah, it's finger ballet. There you go.
That's what we're going to call it from now on, finger ballet.
Ultimately, I don't think it matters what society thinks as a whole, whether gaming is art or not. It is what you think it is. Personally, I think clothes are art because I'm a girl, and I think makeup is art. I also think video game is art, but there's a lot of people that don't agree with me. So it's art to me, and I think that's all that matters, as long as you think that's what it is, and if you think you're producing that and what you think you're producing is art, then I think that's all that should matter. Because someone else is going to feel the same. There's plenty of women out there that think that games are stupid and shoes are art, but I feel that both are. So, I mean,
No, I agree. Art is what you believe it is. So whatever you think is art is art. If you think that setting the table nicely is art, then by all means, that is art.
Set as
Especially
many damn tables as you want.
a nice table setting can make all the difference at Thanksgiving
Flower
dinner.
arrangements, those are damn artistic, okay?
Absolutely. So I think it's a good time to wrap up. Nikki, where on the internet can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, PSN at HarleyQuinn103, and you can find me every other Monday live on the Lipstick Nerds podcast.
Woohoo. James, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Sarah Capelli, SER_CAPELLI. Yeah, that's all. That's where I am right now.
Gotcha.
Keeping a low profile.
And Colin, our esteemed, wonderful, amazing guest, where can people find you on the internet?
Twitter at No Taxation. You can find me on PlayStation Network, Moriarty-IGN.
Good luck with that.
Yes. I'm sorry. I try to answer as many messages as I get and stuff, and my friend list is full, unfortunately. Let's see what else. Yeah, you can find me on IGN. I'm senior editor over there, and then you can find me on Game Over Greggy's channel, Game Over Greggy's show, and a conversation with Colin, which I suspect will come back sooner than everyone thinks.
Conversation with Colin is my inspiration for this show.
I'm still waiting on a Cooking with Colin show, so let's
It's possible. It's possible. I'll let you guys know that I want to do a food and cooking show, and
yeah, Greg has an Oreo channel. I'm sure he can get you to cook in front of
Greg can do what he wants, I guess. The four of us we have big plans for the channel. That's why we're kind of quiet right now. We'll continue to do the podcast, and I promise you we will have more shows, familiar shows and new shows, in the coming months. Much more content than we're doing now. You can find me in all those places, and thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it. Oh, and you can find me on Podcast Beyond, of course.
Beyond.
What? Beyond? Yeah. What is this Beyond you speak of?
Podcast Beyond is IGN's PlayStation podcast, and
the number one
PlayStation podcast.
It is, and depending on when you look at iTunes, it's the number one video game podcast in the world, which we're very honored about. And I was saying on another podcast, I think Greg tweeted the numbers, but we had between July 1st and July 31st over 1 million downloads on Podcast Beyond. So we very much thank I'm sure we have some crossover traffic here. We very much thank all those people for listening to our podcast, and we're kind of overwhelmed and humbled by the success of our stupid little show. So thank you for that, and thank you for giving me another outlet and avenue in which to speak. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Any time. We really enjoyed having you. And of course, you can always find me on Twitter at Ben Riddick. You can follow the podcast at RiddickulousRT. That's RiddickulousRT. And you can visit the website. The show goes live every Sunday at 7:30 Pacific time in the evening at www.nkrn.org/podcast live. I want to give a special thanks to Justin Doss and Elias Toifexis for our little opening, and the Chicago Pixel Band for our theme song. Really special thanks to Colin for taking an hour out of his time to grace us with his presence.
Thank you. I was just grinding levels in Tales of Exilia, so I wasn't really doing anything important.
Guys, it has been another ridiculous night. And remember, you can't spell ridiculous without Riddick.